Our honorary degree recipient today is Brent Choi, who will be introduced by Robin Hesse, Professor, School of Media Studies and Information Technology.
Thank you very much. So I first met Brent in the 90s at the Toronto advertising agency called Young and Rubicam, and I was a creative guy there, and he was a young writer, practically a kid, maybe a little shyer than some, and one of many in our department. We lost touch for a while, and to tell you the truth, he kind of slipped my mind. But some years later, I noticed something. That kid from Y&R, he landed a gig at Low Roche. This was a hot agency in Canada, one of the most famous. And I really took notice. I thought, good for him. But who knows? Maybe he got lucky. You know, people in our business sometimes we're plagued with self-doubt, so we like to imagine, well, you know, people get lucky. Maybe it's a coincidence. You tell me. Brent gets promoted to Associate Creative Director at Roche, then leaves for the Toronto office of Saatchi & Saatchi, you may have heard of them, as a full-fledged creative director. That office shoots up from 45 to 11 in the Canadian rankings. He then goes to a small independent shop, and suddenly it's on fire, doing not Canadian, not American, but global work for BMW. You know those films that were going viral with the cars doing the impossible tricks in the middle of the desert? That was Brent and his team. Next, he's at J. Walter Thompson in Toronto as Chief Creative Officer, a pretty young one. And guess what? JWT is suddenly a finalist for Agency of the Year, and their work is winning Lions at the International Festival in Cannes. Then he goes to New York, where that kid I met back at Y&R is promoted to Chief Creative Officer of the flagship office of one of the largest advertising agencies in the world, where last year he helped his team win 12 Cannes Lions, a very coveted, like the Oscars in our industry, the most for that office in its history. I don't think this is a coincidence. So today, Brent splits his time between Toronto, where he's now president of JWT's Canadian operation, and New York, where he's their Chief Creative Officer of Global Brands. In his career, he's won over 25 Cannes Lions, with more expected next week, fingers crossed. And he was named the #2 digital Chief Creative Officer in the world in the prestigious Big One rankings. Now, on a personal note, you'd think with all this success, Brent's life and, of course, his social media feed would be filled with exotic locations, exciting events, and famous people. But I'm fortunate to be one of Brent's online friends. And you know what's on his Facebook feed? Pictures of his wife and his kids playing hockey. And I don't think that's a coincidence either. Ladies and gentlemen, Brent Choi.
President Whitaker, it is with great honor and pleasure that we ask you to confer upon Brent Choi this Bachelor of Applied Studies degree.
Thanks, everyone. Just open this up here. All right, students, parents, families, faculty, it is truly an honor to be here today. I mean, to think where I came from and to be here today is unbelievable. Funny enough, my business school convocation was exactly 25 years ago this week. So it's pretty unbelievable. You know, and when I think about it, it's crazy to think that I graduated before many of you were even born. And I don't think I'm that old, but I guess I am. But I do remember the feeling, and I remember that sense of relief, the pride, but there's a lot of also butterflies and uncertainty of what the world was going to bring. So to all those students who are graduating today at the top of your class, congratulations, you are set up for immediate success. For those who are beloved, you know, there's a real skill there, a life skill that's going to help you a lot in the real world. For those who are not at the top of the class, not necessarily beloved, sort of squeaked through the program, not necessarily good looking. You still have a chance, and I'm your proof, okay? So that leads me to my theme today, and it's a theme for my life, which is failure and fight. So as I told you, I graduated 25 years ago with no fanfare. No companies were lined up to hire me, finance, accounting, consulting firms, marketing firms, no one, nothing. But I managed to land a few interviews, and I got hired at, for those who know the ad business, Ogilvy and Mather, which is like a pretty renowned agency. David Ogilvy is the founder, an icon. And after about 6 months, I got fired. Yeah, wasn't my fault. There's circumstances going around, so, it wasn't my fault. So I thought, more on that later. That was as a business manager, by the way. So I thought maybe the business side isn't right for me, even though my degree was in business. So I went into trying to get a portfolio together in copywriting, and I landed a job at Y&R where I met Robin. And I thought, okay, this is it. I am a copywriter, and I'm going to start really rocking and rolling here. The creative director who hired me, after 6 months, left. And a new creative director came in, and she cleaned out a third of the department, including me. So I'm about 2 years into my career, fired. Again, I don't think my fault. Like, she wanted her own team, and she wanted to build up her department with her people, so I was fired again. So I went to another agency called Ben Simon Byrne, which is still around today, a very strong agency, and things were going pretty good. And then they merged with another company, which meant duplication, which meant I got fired. So now we have 3 straight firings. And, a little anxiety building in me. But again, thankfully, I got hired again at a place called Vickers and Benson, which was a renowned Canadian agency, which the older ad people remember. I think today it's called Havas through many, many changes. And things are going really good there. And then after 2 years, guess what happened? No. I got headhunted and went to a new agency called Publicis, which was just starting. And today it's one of the biggest in the world and so successful. And that's when I remember the feeling. I was doing so good. I was like, you know what? I'm making good money, got a good job at a good place. I met my future wife who's here today. Like, I felt really good. I bought a flat screen TV, I remember. That was really a special moment. We bought a house together. So 2 years into my Publicis career, guess what happened? I got fired. So think about this. 10 years in my career, 4 out of my first 5 jobs, I was fired. Now I want you guys to project 10 years ahead. Imagine it's 10 years from now, and you've been fired 4 of the first 5 jobs. And I'm not talking like in marketing to finance to insurance to banking, all within advertising. There's only like 25 agencies of note, and 4 of them already fired me. So, you start questioning yourself. Imagine, like, what would your family say to you? What would your friends say to you if that happened to you? What would your classmates, how would they judge you as you look around to your fellow peers? Imagine you heard, oh, Joe got fired for his 4th time in 5 years. What would you do? Well, as Robin alluded to, I went to a place called La Roche. And that place was a creative hotshop, but known for working you day and night. But it wasn't about the day and night. This is where I learned what I critically needed to learn in my first 10 years, but I didn't. It wasn't about night and day, or working night and day. It was about learning to fight. It was about learning to raise my hand more. It was about putting myself out there and trying to learn different things and pushing myself to be better. I learned to fight. So that was in 2002. And knock on wood, I have not been fired since, which is a good thing. But learning to fight is what has driven my next 15 years. And that has been an experience that, I would never have dreamed of sitting where you are today. I've been so grateful and so honored. I've run large companies, including the flagship office in New York. I've lived in New York. I've run major global brands. I've got to race cars as part of my job, which is pretty crazy. I've become friends with Matthew McConaughey. He literally calls me and emails me like weekly, and he even sends us a Christmas card to our house, which is pretty awesome. And I've got to, of course, do great global campaigns for BMW, for Tim Hortons, for Rolex, and many others. So my career, I've been all over the world, and it's unbelievable to think at that 10-year mark when I was fired 4 of my first 5 jobs on what was to come. But what wouldn't have come if I didn't learn the critical skill in my life of learning to fight. Now, the next 15 years were not easy, not at all. There's been, as you get more senior, as Robin will know, it gets harder. There's more pressure, there's more things that go wrong. But what I learned, again, was how to deal with it. I learned to fight. There's that great expression, greatness doesn't come from nothing bad happening. It's how you respond when it does. Today, I have a funny anecdote. I was in the New York office, and I was doing really well, and I saw the CEO and the head of HR in a closed-door meeting. And I was a month into my job there. Like, I was pretty secure. And I remember walking by, looking at them, and they both sort of looked at me, and I thought, they're going to fire me. And then I laughed to myself, but I remember smiling, thinking, that's good, Brent. Keep thinking that. Keep thinking that, because do not get comfortable. It's a little sadistic, but I live each day thinking I'm going to get fired. Even today being here, I feel a little guilty not being in the office and thinking someone's like, oh, what a slacker, he's at a convocation. So, in other words, I learn to fight whenever there's failure. And in fact, I've sometimes created failure in my mind so I can fight harder. Fighting through procrastination, fighting through saying that's good enough, fighting giving up on yourself, fighting for settling when I know I can do better. I'm sure many of you are sitting in the audience today unsure of what the future is going to bring. Probably a little nervous, probably a little insecure. Probably there's things in your life that haven't gone your way or as you had hoped. But I want to share this with you, and I tell this to my kids. It's not how the race starts. I'm sure you're looking around going, oh, that person's going to be a star, and that person I don't know. But it doesn't matter right now. It's what happens in the next part of your career and the next part after that. Because if I can do it, you can do it. I had nothing. In fact, I had worse than nothing. I had failure after failure after failure after failure. By the way, I have the same speech for my dating life as well. Seriously, this speech has mostly been on my career, but it's a life speech. The question isn't if something's going to go wrong in your life or in your career. Is the failure going to break you, or is it going to build you? Are you going to fight? Will you fight? I'm excited to see what this 2018 class will bring. The world does need you. The world needs you to fight. Thank you.